How's it going, everyone? Welcome to this week's Q&A. So like any other week, if you want a chance to one of your questions being answered, make sure you drop a comment down below and I'll try to answer each and every question. So the first question of the week is, what should you look for when buying a 9th generation Honda Accord? So 9th generation Accord is from 2013 to 2017. The question was specific to the 2.4 four-cylinder, although I will mention some things in the 6-cylinder, and most of these issues will probably be for both of them. But again, this was specific to the 2.4 four-cylinder engine, the K24. And again, when purchasing a used vehicle, make sure you do your homework, check the history, ask for a history of the vehicle, maintenance, run a Carfax, although everything may not be reported on a Carfax. If possible, bring a Honda or a technician with you, or even better, take it to a Honda dealer and have them thoroughly inspect it so you could buy accordingly to what they find and use that as a bargaining tool. But some of the things to look out for are ABS module. This is very, very common on these cars. And essentially, there's no way to hide this. So you will know right off the bat, all the lights will be on, ABS, VSA, traction control, things of that nature. You take a scan tool and you'll have some valve malfunction codes in the ABS system. That's no way around that. So oil consumption. Now, this is going to be very important to ask for maintenance records. If you see maintenance records of 7, 8, 9, 10,000 mile oil change intervals, chances are this vehicle will be consuming oil, especially if it's a higher mileage vehicle. Well, that may or may not be a deal breaker for you, but obviously they're going to try to get top dollar from you, and you can use this as a bargaining tool. And this is if they have records. If it don't have records, then chances are you may not get an honest opinion here. And a simple way to tell if the oil changes have been done on time is pull out the dipstick. If it's nice and silver, it's probably been maintained for, relatively well. If you pull it out and it's like a dark brown, golden color, chances are it has not had freaking oil changes. And just use that as a guide. Doesn't mean it has to be exactly that way, but use that as a guide. Oftentimes, oil consumption will lead to a failed cat. Now, this will be hard to tell because anybody selling a car is going to clear the check engine light. Now, you could take a scan tool and check for OBD2 monitors and see if the monitors, specifically for the catalytic converter, are not complete. Chances are somebody cleared the light and is trying to play some funny games. So this is the importance of taking it to a Honda dealer or bringing a trained technician with you. You can do this, with the pocket scanner. A lot of them do this already, but not all times, not everybody is going to be willing to and have the knowledge to do that. So just to something to look out for. Oil leaks, these will be pretty evident. If the engine looks extremely clean, like it's been washed, chances are they're trying to hide something and there was a leak there, they washed it away or whatnot. Valve cover gaskets, VTEC solenoids, oil pumps on the V6s, stuff of that nature is very common on these cars. Again, some of these people may have maintenance records, which will say, hey, this has been done already. Maybe it hasn't had an oil leak, but if it looks too good to be true, it probably is. Torn intake boot, more so on the four-cylinder, and this kind of goes with engine mounts. They can fail relatively often at later in a mileage, 100,000 miles or so. So torn intake boot, not a deal breaker, but just take a quick look, check for cracks or tears, both on the back side and the front side of the intake tube. And we see more of them on the four-cylinder, although we do see some on the six-cylinder as well. Mount, once again, check the mount. Just power brake it, forward, reverse, look for vibrations, things of that nature. Calipers, rear calipers seem to seize a lot too, so just check for uneven wear from one side to the other, or for like hot spots and stuff like that. That's usually a good indicator that you have a sticking caliper. Usually one side will be more rusted than the other. Chances are sometimes you can have both back calipers. If you do run across a back caliper on one of those cars on a higher mileage vehicle, just change both. It's the best thing. If one has failed, the other one, chances are about to fail as well. And again, time belt after maintenance records, see if the time belt was done. Not that is an issue, although you could again use that as a bargaining power. If the time belt hasn't been done, it's got 100, 110,000 miles and it hasn't been done, then that's something you could use to bargain and bring down the price maybe a little bit. And also take the opportunity to look at the oil pump and see if it's leaking. If you see oil all along the oil pan, chances are the oil pump is leaking. So some of the things, there's other things. Ball joints do fail sometimes on those too. You're not going to be able to tell on the ground or by driving it oftentimes, but just some of the things to look at. So hopefully it answers this question for you. All right, so the next question is, what engines and when should valve adjustments should be done? So basically all Honda engines have adjustable rocker where you could take and increase or decrease the gap between the rocker and the valve, often known as the valve lash or valve lash adjustment. And a good time to do this is right around 100,000 miles. Now, oftentimes there won't be any issues, but it is a good idea and a good rule of thumb. Now, if you've been doing all your maintenance, your fluids, your filters, your time belt and stuff like that, right around 100,000 miles when you do the time belt, if needed on a 6-cylinder or older 4-cylinder, it's going to be a very expensive repair job. So you may want to opt and do it maybe 10, 15,000 miles later, which is okay. But I would say right around 100,000 miles is a great idea to do these valve adjustments. Now, oftentimes valves get tighter, not looser. People often mistake loose valves and having to go in there because they're a little bit noisy. But I prefer to leave a loose valve loose than make a valve too tight. A loose valve is a happy valve. A valve that's too tight often leads to misfires and things of that nature. So people often say, hey, I want to do a valve adjustment, my engine is loud. And chances are it's really not. It's just you having that thought process in your mind. And again, if I go in there and the valves are extremely loose, yes, I'll bring them down a little bit. If they're right within spec, I'll never make them tighter because, again, a tight valve will cause issues and a loose valve, not so much. So if valves are tight, then absolutely, that's when you need to loosen them. And then at that point, I tell people, well, it may actually be noisier after because we found tight valves and now you have a bigger gap and it has a bigger chance of it, making noise. But the engine will be running fine and the way it needs to. So that's how I would approach it. Basically, every Honda engine, with the exception of the new J Series, at least here in North America, has a capability of getting a valve adjustment. The new J Series does not use adjustable rockers. So that's a thing of the past, probably going forward. But for now, most of these engines and most vehicles still have a valve adjustment, and we can still do them. Again, 100,000 miles is a good time period. I understand if you're doing a 90 or 100,000 mile service, doing time belt, spark plugs, it's a huge expense. So you may want to break those up in 5,000 mile intervals. Give yourself a little break there. But again, if you had to choose between valve adjustment or a timing belt, absolutely do the time belt first, do the valve adjustment after. But just be prepared to do those right around that time. If you go past the interval, chances are you may not have any issues, but sometimes we do see issues. So not priority, but I would specifically try to do it right around 100, 105, 110,000 miles, or right around that area. So hopefully that answers this question for you. All right, so the next question is, will radar theft on these Hondas continue to be an issue? And that really depends on where you live. So here, I'm very close to the New York City area, so about 20 minutes or so, and that seems to be the hotspot area. Now, some people say stop picking on New York City, but unfortunately, New York City, the surrounding boroughs, and the Hobokens, the Jersey Cities, Pattersons, Elizabeths, stuff like that really seems to be the hotspot for these radar thefts. So really depends again on where you live. If you live near a major city, chances are you're probably either going to be a victim or you know somebody that was a victim of a stolen radar. So currently there are available brackets for the 17 to 25 CRV, 18 to 25 Accords, 23 and newer pilots, and I'm working on the 26 and newer passports. Now, when these passports came out, immediately I saw it as a red flag because the radar is right, it looks like it's right in front of the bumper support. So what's gonna happen? You tap somebody, it's going to break the radar, maybe it'll just break the tabs. Regardless, it's going to be an issue. So what's gonna happen? You're going to need a radar, you're probably gonna need a bumper. What are people gonna do? They're gonna go ahead and steal the radar because it's obviously easier and cheaper to steal a radar than having to pay somebody. Now, most honest people are going to go through the insurance company and the right channels. Unfortunately, there's people in this world that want to take advantage of other people and make a quick buck. So it is what it is. So yes, in my opinion, it's going to continue to be an issue. Now, I haven't seen any issues on the previous generation passports until I did my first radar bracket on the 25 Pilot over the weekend. And the customer that brought me the car actually showed me like, hey, look, there's a picture. And sure enough, it was a previous generation passport with the emblem missing and a radar stolen. So we don't see too many of those. That was the first one I saw. I don't see too many of the previous pilots either. But again, if bad enough, it's probably going to get there. and just the majority of the ones that we see are the ones that we currently have brackets made for. So I think it's going to be an issue. It's only going to continue to be an issue going forward. As these vehicles get older, people are not going to want to purchase a $600,000, $700,000, $800,000, $1,500 radar. Unfortunately, insurance companies, they're going to pay for it, but body shops may opt to, save some money there, pay somebody to go and steal one. I'm not sure exactly what's going on, who's stealing these, but oftentimes you find these on Facebook. If you see somebody selling tons and tons of these, please do not purchase from one of them. Chances are they stole them. They're selling these, unless if they come from a junkyard or salvage yard. And you see somebody on Facebook Marketplace specifically, and they're selling 5, 6, 7, 10 sets. Chances are these people are up to no good. I mean, maybe they are going to junkyards and scrapyards and getting these, but I wouldn't support those. I'd rather go to a local junkyard where I know at least the car was in there for a wreck. And, like that, you're not supporting somebody potentially taking somebody from somebody else. So hopefully that answers this question for you. And, that's just what it is. Unfortunately, we live in a world where people are going to take advantage wherever they can and just, kind of try to pick on a low-hanging fruit here. So hopefully that answers this question for you. So the next question is water leaks, how to pinpoint them, common areas, and stuff like that. So we'll start off with the common areas or stuff that you should look at before anything else. And this obviously depends on where the leak is. So some things that we see, trunk seals. Sometimes people put things on a trunk, they go close the trunk, and all of a sudden there's obviously something there, and it bends the trunk a little bit or tears the seal. Now you're causing a void there or a missing seal, and you're going to have a leak there. So if you have something in your trunk, take a look around the seal. Also take a look around the taillights. That's often areas that we see stuff leaking. Again, if you have a leak going around the doors, take a real close look around the seal. Sometimes when people lose their keys or forget them inside the car or whatnot, and you have to Slim Jim inside the car, people go in there and they'll tear a seal, or they'll pry open a door with a wedge and just deform the door. So take a close look there if you're having a water leak of some sort over there. Again, we mentioned the taillights already. Also, this is an issue coming from an accident-related vehicle. We'll get a car that's been in an accident. It was poorly fixed, and we see water leaks there. So if the car recently had a body shop, if we see stuff that was removed in that area that the leak is going on, obviously question what kind of work was done, the quality of the work that was done, and take a real close look there in that area. Another thing that we see a lot of is sunroof drains and AC drains. Now, this often happens from people parking under trees or in the fall. A lot of leaves collect on top of the cowl, and these things eventually end up clogging both the AC drain and the sunroof drain. So once in a while, maybe every time you do an oil change, go ahead, open a sunroof, make sure the drains have nothing in there, nothing in the channels. If they do, pick them out, blow them out, whatever it is. In the fall, have a habit of opening up your hood, especially if you're in an area that leaves fall a lot in the fall area, and just cleaning out the leaves. Try not to blow them because the leaves sometimes will break and go inside. So try to use a small vacuum and pick out the bigger stuff, and then a small vacuum to vacuum it out to avoid anything falling there and potentially clogging, the AC drain. Sometimes we also see spider webs causing, making a web and, blocking the drain, and then it backs up and leaks inside of the car. So again, this is very area specific here. Sometimes you also see seam sealer from the factory or after body shops, not being installed correctly, not enough of it applied. Sometimes we'll see little pinholes in them, or even sometimes over time of the constant flexing of the body, we see seam sealer cracking, and that'll be usually where the roof meets the side of the car on the pillars, especially if they have the strip of plastic going across it. They use seam sealer there to join and kind of close off both those gaps. So take a real close look if you're having a leak from the top of the roof area. We also see a lot of aftermarket windshields here, installed incorrectly, not enough glue. Maybe the old glue wasn't cleaned properly, and will either have wind noise and or leaks from the windshield. Obviously, that'll leak oftentimes into the fuse boxes, causing all sorts of wacky issues. Your front carpet area will be wet and things of that nature. And last but not least, I actually came across this one on a Honda Prologue over the week, and we had a wacky issue with it going on. It only happened when it rained. Now the car had a code for a door lock. Initially, the customer didn't explain to us that it only happened while it was in the rain. So I did some testing. Everything checked out okay, but I said the code keys come back. Let's just do the door lock. I did the door lock. Everything went out. what happened was between me ordering the part and the part coming in, installing it, the car was dropped off, the leak dried up. So I replaced the door lock, cleared the code, and went away. I said, perfect, the car is gone, it's fixed, great. Literally, the customer picked up the car on a rainy day and came right back. So I took a closer look. He's like, oh yeah, it only happens when I take it to the car wash or when it rains. So I said, well, that's a critical part of information here, because that would have threw me in the right direction and would have made me look in a completely different area. Sure enough, where the harness meets the frame of the car, so from door to the car, it wasn't installed properly. That's all it was. So water was coming in there, trickling down the harness and going directly into that fuse box. So we went ahead, obviously we repaired that, we fixed it. I put the harness back in and everything was good to go from there. But oftentimes this is on newer cars or cars, once again, that have been touched and have been in the body shop, grommets, either not installed all the way in or not positioned and sealed tightly all the way around, causing water leaks, and oftentimes can have some wacky stuff going on there. And last but not least, some accessories. When you add accessories that weren't designed for the vehicle, oftentimes can cause other issues, whether it be check engine lights, noises, water leaks and stuff like that. If you're installing anything that, for instance, hooks on the underneath where the door would close, or maybe some rain guards or anything like that, it can deform these seals and cause wind noise and water leaks. So just be mindful of what you installed, and before you go to the dealer and say, hey, something's not right with this car or whatnot, and they charge you and then you have to pay for something that you installed or whatnot. If it's factory installed, could be that people and robots make mistakes, so that's definitely a possibility as well. So just stuff to look for there. And the way I pinpoint them is usually a combination of water, whether it be a water hose in the problem area, and I usually tape it, let it go for a while, take off some panels, and then come back. Or we run it through the car wash. Sometimes we have to flex it and stuff like that, so we'll use the water hose, we'll move the car around to get that, the seams separating and whatnot. And things of that nature. Oftentimes when I predict it's a windshield leak, it may only leak in certain times. So I'll spray some soapy water stuff and blow from the inside out, and I'll see bubbles come out, and right there I'll know that that's my problem area. So just some tools that I use. There are obviously other ways, but common problem areas, some of the methods I use. So hopefully that answers the question for you. And last but not least, question of the week. And once again, if you want a chance to one of your questions being answered, make sure you drop a comment down below. So when doing a head gasket, what are some things that you may want to do while you are in there? So I made it specifically more so towards a 1.5T, because the chances are, if you're doing a head gasket, it's going to be on one of those vehicles. So this is some things obviously that we're gonna do, and some things that you may want to do while you're in there. So obviously you're gonna want to get a head gasket set. So that replaces all the gaskets at that point. Your head gasket, valve cover gasket, some seals, some O-rings, stuff like that. Obviously you have to do that. Don't just do the gasket. If it's failed, chances are it's at a later mileage, and some of these stuff are dried up once you pull them, deform them and stuff like that. So it's also a good idea to do timing chain, tensioner, and the guides while you're in there. I would absolutely do those. Obviously all this comes at a cost, but if you're in there, I think it's better to do it now than have to go back once again. Aftermarket head studs, an absolute must if you're doing this on your own, or if you're paying a private shop to do this. Dealers, if it's warranty, they're not gonna do this. But if there's customer pay, maybe a dealer by dealer situation here. If somebody brought me A or P headsets to do my dealer, I would have no issue installing them as long as it was out of warranty. But again, it may be a dealer by dealer situation here. Also a good idea probably to replace your injectors. It's going to save you a lot of labor if they in fact fail later on. Now the injectors do have a high fail rate. If it's after the extension warranty period and it failed, you may like to do that. And all you're gonna have to do is just pay for the injectors itself, maybe an extra half-hour labor or so to pop them in. You do not have to take them out to do the head gasket, unless if you maybe send out the head to get resurfaced, which is another thing you should probably check and do if needed. Check, make sure the head is nice and level. If it's not, get it resurfaced. If it's out of limits completely, then you're going to need a head at that point. And also check the block. Make sure you have no scratch sleeves. The block is nice and even, nice and straight, stuff like that. Additionally, when you put everything back together, make sure you're adjusting these valves. So again, if you were due for a valve adjustment, a great time, and should be done regardless every time you unbolt and bolt the head. Anyways, some people may skip this, but definitely a must do and something you should do for sure. And last but not least, you should definitely be cleaning your throttle body. These throttle bodies build up a ton of carbon behind the plate, and it's a lot easier to clean it once everything is apart versus putting everything back together and doing it at a later time. It'll take you about 5 minutes, and then once you put all this back together, do a throttle body relearn and a crank sensor clear and relearn as well. And that would be some of the must-do things, in my opinion, at this point. Obviously, address anything that's broken or worn or torn or along the way. If hoses are old, replace the hoses, specifically the coolant stuff, any vacuum hoses or anything PCV related. Get that stuff changed while you're in there. Count it as one big job. And it's a lot easier to do everything while you're in there than have to go back in there, 5, 6, 7 months, a year or so later. So hopefully that answers the question for you, and I'll catch everyone on the next one.